Hello and welcome to Mirador Television. We are the biggest little TV in the world, based in Lewes, East Sussex in England. Our aim is to entertain and to spice things up a little. We will also keep an eye on the local politics, because let's face it, someone has to. Our programs range from stories about the local people to stories about people from all the way across the pond. Brought to you by our wonderful colleagues in New York. So why not sit back, relax with your favourite cuppa, or maybe your favourite tipple, and enjoy. This is
Well, I am here to say I'm sorry. It's a Monday morning. Can't you tell? Everything wakes up with a headache. I do not know why it is, but everything wakes up with a headache. And as a consequence, the whole bloody system has gone down this morning. And we got such a special program lined up for you. Whether we can retrieve it or not, I'm not absolutely sure. Because I've had to revert to the phones. What I will do is I will probably take leave of your absence at 8 o'clock and just take 2 minutes to see whether we can fix everything. But I'm really, I think this jerky bit, which is a pain in the bum to everybody, is going to actually carry on this morning. And how sad, because let me tell you what we got lined up for you. I mean, first of all, I roused myself very early this morning because I'm actually in New Haven, which is, for those who don't know, this part of the world, is a port which sends ferries and freight to Dieppe in France. As you enter the town, you will see a Canadian flag flying. And the reason for that is that this is where the ill-fated, I think it was in 1942, the ill-fated Dieppe raid, mostly composed of Canadian soldiers, launched itself on the French coast to try and dislodge the Nazi defenders there. It was a complete and utter disaster. More Canadians were killed. Many were taken into captivity. But the two towns, New Haven and Dieppe, have not forgotten. And there is a memorial each year, memorial service each year for the Canadian dead, and for those others who were with them because they weren't 100% Canadian. And certainly Dieppe tries to turn on the show too over there with floral displays and welcoming the Canadians who go over to see where it is that their loved ones tried to liberate and where they died. So that's special, and New Haven is now a port. You can get on the ferry, or you can't right now because of the COVID regulations, but you can get onto a ferry, and in 4 hours you're in Dieppe. And in fact, this is my favorite holiday. Because I more or less have to maintain a discreet closeness, if you like, to the television station throughout the year. I only take just a few days off and go over to Dieppe, where I do nothing but wander around, have brandy and my coffee in the morning, eat a lobster at lunchtime, threaten to do the nightlife, and by 9 o'clock I'm in bed, ready for the next day. But for somebody like me, that's an ideal holiday. I'm able to wander over there and make sure that all the pretty girls can see me, so that they know that there's a husband in waiting. And it never happens. So back I come. And I do the same here. And it never happens. So back I go. Oh dear, I'm wifeless. Never mind. I'm not sure that I at this time of my life, I'm not sure whether I would ever be a satisfactory candidate for going to the altar again. So the second thing is that at 8 o'clock or 8:30, well, 8 o'clock, Paul Fowler is going to join me, I hope, and I'm going to try and bring him in on the phone. But the big problem with the situation today is when we have three of us in apparently remote locations, it all goes skew. That's probably what's going to happen. Let's take a quick look at the news headline, shall we? It's 7:53 at the moment. That's a headline in itself. Let's start off with local, because there are 2 or 3 local things that have caught the imagination. And I think that one of the things that has done so is the fact that there was a house fire in Ringmer on Sunday with lots of bells clanging and sirens wailing. Fortunately, it was a house fire. The house was destroyed, and I got some nice photographs of it. And nobody was hurt. So we're lucky on that. Secondly, there's been a mix-up between county and district in the printing of the ballot forms for the next election, which is May the 4th, May the 3rd, May the 4th. So as a consequence, you may not get your card to vote for a little while. Somebody actually managed to get all the boundaries wrong. So people would have been voting for the wrong person. Can you imagine what that would have been? Oh boy, if you're elected and then suddenly it turned out that you weren't elected, can you imagine the row? So that's an ongoing thing. And in fact, Stephen Catlin will be around tomorrow to give us the details on that. And finally, there's still no sign that the district council have paid the tax on the Stanley Sports Ground, and the second ground, which they hold as a charitable trust. They've been telling us that it's going to be paid next week. It's going to be paid next week. So I actually phoned up the council last week and said, I owe you my council tax. I've got the money, but I'm going to pay you next week. You could have heard the explosion at the other end. You can't do that. And yet here they are doing it themselves with 400 plus days late in paying their tax bill. And that's the sort of thing that it doesn't breed confidence. That's the point. Is the country going to fail because Lewis District Council didn't pay its tax? No, I don't think so. And I suppose in the scheme of things, it's something we'll have forgotten in a couple of months' time. But the fact is, if they're being as badly administered this time on an issue like this, what else is going wrong? Because it does seem that there's a lady complaining on Mick Symes Lewis Present Facebook page over the weekend. She's been trying for 5 months to get the council to fix her house, to the point where she's now got mushrooms sprouting up in the bathroom and cracks in the wall. And just to prove her point, she actually did post some photos of the carnage, and it's that sort of thing that is loses council. I mean, it loses trust in the council, and if those people who are elected think that it's not them, this is going on down below in the workshops and so on, it's not them. They say, I'm sorry, but you get elected because the buck stops with you. And if you're not doing anything about it, then you are the council. There's no sense in blaming the employees. You are the council. Now, that's shocking that you would allow something like that to take place. So that part of the program was very important, I think, and we've got some photographs. We will try to show them a little later. We'll probably do another short news bulletin later on when we're not doing something remote from New Haven. But it's important for us to be able to do things remote. We're not just egocentric or Lewis-centric or whatever the phrase is, to Lewis himself. We look after, or try to look after, the interests of those people within the district and, for that matter, beyond. So it is important that we actually make sure that some of these things are done efficiently, and that indeed that this isn't a spreading thing. Oh, well, never mind. Lots of woe there, but abroad it's even worse because India has suddenly raging COVID through the Indian continent, subcontinent. Thousands dying, and all sorts of other people being taken into hospital, bodies being burned. It's in a dreadful state. Why should we worry, you should say? Well, the fact of the matter is that there's an outbreak like that. It's the same as any other disease, is it will have an impact. Well, we've got to make sure that it doesn't have an impact here. So the fact that it's out of control in India may well see us back down, oh, dare we say it, with some sort of lockdown conditions. So what's happening in India is very important. We've got to try and keep our eye on that and see how it goes. But there is already threats from the president, although he's a bit of a blowhard president, to sentence people to death who were responsible for slowing down the spread of vaccine. Apparently they've had vaccine, but the Indian bureaucracy is 10 times worse than ours. If you can imagine that, a bureaucracy 10 times worse than ours. So there we are. The India is in a muddle, and it's going to have an impact on us, I'm sure. It is becoming increasingly concerning that knife attacks now, amongst youngsters particularly, but in the UK, are taking place in open spaces, open times, where it's totally visible, and the attackers don't seem to care. Now, the police have arrested 4 youths for stabbing to death a 13-year-old, 14-year-old over the weekend in London. And it's really a very, very upsetting situation that we should find ourselves. It's starting to become lawless. There is one thing that one can say about Britain, for all her flaws, she's always had fairly good law and order. Well, it's falling to pieces because of COVID. And it's got to be addressed. You can't just let it go. There's no sense in saying, oh, well, people are murdered. It wouldn't have happened if COVID hadn't happened. That doesn't work that way. So that's another concern. We're on to under 30s now to get the jab. That is part of the thing that's going well. So if you've been champing at the bit, waiting to have a needle stuck in your arm, it's going to happen pretty soon now, because we're up to age 30. So we'll keep at that. The sleaze in Westminster, it's not so much Boris's refurbishment of his flat. Okay, so the guy overspent a bit, but it was going to be done anyway. And when he leaves, he can't take it with him. So it belongs to the state. And indeed, if you mentioned an issue like this, the Prime Minister or the head of state used public funds to make sure his house looked good is they'd look at you with amazement. Just, well, why wouldn't he? They certainly don't see things the same as we do, and I wonder why we do. Perhaps it's just because all the stirrers are at it, because it's a good issue. Ooh, corruption. But there is, by the look of things, a stink of corruption in Westminster, with contracts being handed out willy-nilly to friends of the Conservatives. And I think that's one thing that is going to come out in the next few days. And you have to bear with it, because it is not a pleasant picture. It's not a pleasant picture at all. Okay, that's the news. There's just 6th of May is the 6th of May is actually the elections that I was talking about. So you've got 1 or 2 more days to put up with election stuff. But the Scottish Nats are coming back very strongly, and it looks as if it's going to be a knife-edge vote again. And I had a long discussion on the weekend with a friend of mine who's an economist, and as he says, by all means, if the Scots vote to leave, it will have no alternative but to let them leave. But what's going to happen then is that they will have to deal. It'll be a hard border, there's no question. And I think that everybody in England will be so furious is that they'll make sure it is a proper hard border, which means then Scotland is going to have to finance itself. And I think that going through Nicola Sturgeon's mind is that everybody in Brussels will throw up their hands and say, oh my goodness me, how wonderful. Now we've got Scotland in the EU. Well, we haven't. First of all, we'll have to go through the same process as anybody else to prove that it's worthy of being in the EU. But even in the interim period, it's going to cost a lot of money, because we pay a lot of money from here, and that will cease immediately upon Scotland deciding to go its own way. So it's going to cost a lot of money. And if you want to know a couple of examples, first of all, in Dublin, the official standpoint of the Irish is we want a united Ireland. In fact, it's in their constitution. But secretly, they're dreading it, because if they have to pick up the tab that we're paying for at the moment in terms of infrastructure, social welfare, and so on, for Northern Ireland, Ireland will have an even bigger burden on its plate than it's got at the moment. And it's a tiny little country. It's a lovely country. It's a country of leprechauns and green elfins and jolly merriment and drinking pints of Guinness. Yes, it's all those things, but it's also going to pay for those things. And it's not having a good time in so doing. And Scotland are going to be exactly the same. They're going to have to pay for those things. And the EU, which has got a great big hold in its finances anyway, and refuses to, the accountants refuse to sign off on the books, they're not exactly going to do a piper's jig to welcome Scotland. So we are in for some interesting times in the next couple of years, I fear. Indeed, I do fear. Well, if I can, I suppose I should try and play something so that I can catch my breath. Oh, the weather today, it's gone colder and breezier, and it's likely not to reach much more than 12 degrees, and it could be down 1. So that's a bit chilly outside, so do wrap up. No rain still, and we will get, even though it's quite cloudy at the moment, we should get some scattering of sun as the day wears by. But that's the sort of the way things are looking this morning. First of all, Mirador's equipment has got a headache and is giving a hell of a lot of trouble to people like me. And secondly, we've got new programs coming up, and let's hope that we can actually get them going. So let's do this just while I attempt the new programs. Well, Well, here we are, and I'm trying to get hold of our good colleague Paul. So, with any luck, we might look down a little while I'm trying to do this. Please forgive me, because everything is all over the place this morning, and I am my own technician. And those people who know me closely know very well that technician is not a word that sits very easily with me. So just forgive me while I pay attention to something else for a minute, because it is important that we get Paul on board this morning. He's normally with me at this time. Well, he normally comes in at 7:30, but he's got his own show, and we're going to introduce that this morning. At least talk about it a little bit. So do please forgive us if we try very hard to make sure that we get Paul on board. So here we go. We'll see if we can do it, and if we can, we can, and if we can't, we can't. So there, you see, this is what one-man bands are like. So I'm going to do that and perhaps talk to you for a little while, in the hope that Paul will come up at some stage. And let's hope that it's here and now, so that he can join us. But it is disappointing, I know. Well, maybe not disappointing to you, but it's disappointing to me. I get up damn early to do this program, and when the equipment decides not to work, it's very frustrating. And particularly since nowadays we hear how the youngsters, I say the youngsters because they are young people that understand computers and develop them, but they're always going to make it bigger and better and actually improve it. And all I find is that it makes it much more difficult. And in fact, we haven't got the opportunity to in fact, make it bigger and better. All it does is get more complicated and difficult to use. So there we are. I'm sounding a bit down and a bit disappointed this morning. Yes, because I worked very hard over the weekend as well, putting this program together. They're not easy. Those of you who think that this is a doddle, by all means, come and join me one day. I wouldn't mind, and you can find out just what it's like. I don't see Paul there yet, so it's difficult to say whether, in fact, he is on the system. But we'll see. We'll see. But let's just chat on for a little while, because I have spent a little bit of time. I don't come down to New Haven very much, and I've been a guest over the weekend of a very interesting family that I'm always talking about, the Shorthouses, a most talented family, and Clive was an economist, and I said to him, Clive, I'd like to get you on talking about ships, because he's a great sailor. I think that he originated from Portsmouth, certainly Southampton, if not. And we could have a little chat. And he said, well, I don't trust this technology. Oh, I said. Oh, the technology is just absolutely superb now. You use your phone, you can use your laptop, or whatever. Yes, he said. Now, there's going to be no living it down, because I'm having a real problem with what goes on this morning. I think what we might well do is normally Paul would join me for this final half hour, and in fact it is 13 minutes past 8, because when we get chatting we winkle stuff out of each other. But I think what I'm probably going to have to do is to say goodbye to you at 8:30, and then see if we can bring Paul back on with his own show and start afresh. So forgive us for all this nonsense, because believe me, we're not going to be very forgiving of those people who put all these things together. So that what we wake up to is really searching for an aspirin for our technical stuff instead of the sort of things that we should do so that we can broadcast satisfactorily. Right, New Haven, I was going to tell you about, because actually the centre of New Haven is a disgrace. It's a disgrace to the local council, and it's a disgrace to the local planners, who keep on saying that they've got a rejuvenation scheme and keep on actually cutting it up. And all they've been capable of doing so far is selling off land to give more houses. If you haven't got the infrastructure, it's senseless building more houses. And New Haven does not have the infrastructure. I know people will get upset because actually the community spirit is terrific. But if you want to compare this town with other towns in our area, it's grotty. And it really needs a lot of work and a lot of attention. However, it has seen some very interesting things, because New Haven Port is, as I said, an important port. If you're going over to Dieppe, you're taking a long way to France, because it is a 4-hour journey, because you have to go over a pretty fair piece of open sea, unlike Dover, where I think it's 20 miles. With the blink of an eye, you're actually getting off the ferry that you just got on. Well, this one, at least you have a nice, you've got time for a nice glass of wine and a gentle pudge out to Dieppe. And it also, as I mentioned, was the site of the raid on Dieppe to try and dislodge the Nazis in the Second World War. It was a very active port in the First World War. And also, it was a center for the small boats, the flotilla of small craft that left the south coast, pleasure boats, paddle boats, steamboats, and the little flotilla itself set out from New Haven and braved the enemy bombers and the guns to bring all sorts of people back, soldiers and civilians back from France, so that we could have another go at seeing if we could do things. I don't see anything much happening at the moment, but who knows? He is. He's there. He's there. Goodness gracious me, that's terrific. I don't think we can get him onto this one. So probably what I'm going to have to do is, in a moment or two, I'm going to have to say toodle pip to you for a couple of seconds, and then I'm going to trip over to the other. I mean, this is the third piece of equipment that we're going to use this morning. We trip over to the other piece of equipment to say a good morning to Paul Fowler. So just hang on a minute, because I don't think we can do both at once. So this one I'm going to end. I'm going to say toodle pip, but just wait till you'll be back.